Okay, welcome to episode number 3, I think it's 3 or 4, of Diary of an Extreme Cake Artist. So with these longer diary entries, my aim is to go through how I make a cake, and that can be aimed at cake artists or just people that don't even make cakes that like my work. They're always curious and always asking how I do what I do, what I use, how long they take, and all those general questions that curious people have. So generally the people that watch my cakes know that I use very simple armatures. So an armature is basically the skeleton and the foundation of the cake. So with this cake, I just used a black vinyl covered board with one stainless steel threaded rod, and that's all I used for this one. But the important thing is with these cakes is that you're stacking and getting the foundations right with the actual cake. So for this one, I used 3 slab cakes. I generally only use rectangular slab cakes, and I taught them at about 1.5 inches for one of these. So I go through and I stack and I taut, and taut means a layer of the ganache in between the 2 cakes, and what that does is creates a stronger foundation. With the stacking as well, I use cake boards and I use something called a dowel. Now for my dowels, I've switched from acrylic dowels now to just the bubble tea straws, which I find they work really well. So, and they're cheap, so that's what I use now. So what I do is I stack the cake and I get a general shape going, and I'll turn my cake around, have a look at it all different angles and see how the shape's looking, and I'll just check with the picture. So what I used with this cake, I just had one drawing as a reference. So what I wanted to create was just a likeness to that drawing that I had, and to bring it to life into a 3D form for the artist that drew the actual picture. So I use my reference and I go around and I just get sort of a shape. I'll just keep turning, looking, carving till I get it to where I want. And then I will find pieces that need filling in. So to do that, I keep all of my offcuts from when I'm carving, and then I'll go in and use the ganache icing and just go in and place all the offcuts around where I need those to go. And then I just carve them back down again into the shape. When I'm finished with my basic shape, I'll go around and do something called a crumb coat. Now I know that a lot of cake artists only use the term crumb coat with buttercream, but I actually do it with the ganache on my cakes. So I'll go through and fill in any sort of little cracks that are around their edges, and I'll let that set. And then the reason I do that is to just sort of tidy it all up, ready for the final coat of ganache. For the final coat of ganache, I get a brand new tub, and then I'll go over and I'll do 1 or 2 coats. Normally I do 2 coats on the head area where I will be sculpting with modeling chocolate, and that's just to give it a better foundation to sculpt upon, pretty much. So with the modeling chocolate, that's where I do the most of my detail before I cover the cake. So with the chocolate that I use, you can build up certain areas, and you can do something which is called blocking out. So that's what I do in the beginning. I place larger bits of modeling chocolate on to get the basic shapes that I'm after, and then I'll go back and use a knife and just carve off and start to refine down the rest of the piece. This for me, this stage of the modeling chocolate takes the longest out of all the cake process. So once I have the face all done in the modeling chocolate, then it's time to cover my cake. So generally with a cake this size, I will normally cover it in 4 parts, finishing with the face, of course. So after a fair bit of practice covering cakes this size, I know where to put the icing so it can blend the seams, and you shouldn't on any of my cakes be able to see any seams at all. And I have a class coming out very shortly, the alien autopsy class, and in that class I will go through and show everybody how I do my seams that way. For covering, I often get asked what icing I use. I use Bakel's fondant. It's the fondant that I've used pretty much since day one. I've tried other brands, but they don't work because of the hot climate that we live in here. So I'm not sponsored by them or anything. That is just the icing that I go to. So after I've covered and I've joined the seams, that's when I'll go over and start to texture the piece. So in my mind, I know when I have sculpted that face with modeling chocolate, then I can remember every little part of that face. So when I then cover it in the fondant, I can go in with my tools and start to scratch in and score in all of the detail in the face. So it's like having a memory of it when you have to go and do it for a second time. Because the icing dries fast, I don't get a lot of time to do this part. So it is good having that second memory there, so I can go through and do that fairly quickly. And I think the texturing the face for me now only takes about 20 minutes. And by that time, the icing is starting to dry anyway. I then went in and constructed the ears. Now on the first piece, I had left some small bits of cake up where I wanted to put the ears on, and that was just to give a foundation for it to sit on. So again, I used the fondant and I added CMC to that just to make it a little bit harder. And I just use a bit of sugar glue, pop the ears on, and that CMC hardens up so fast that it actually starts to dry when you're holding it. So I will generally just hold both ears, and then I will start to join all the icing onto the head. And by the time I've done that, the ears sort of just stay up, so that's cool. Now for the really fun part, the painting. So this guy I did not use an airbrush, only because I just didn't feel like it. I do prefer hand painting. Obviously airbrushing is quicker, but I actually prefer hand painting any day of the week over airbrushing. So what I did was I started with what I do even when I airbrush, and that's shading. So that's going around and shading all the crevices and things, and by doing that, the color soaks into all of the marks that I've made and starts to make the piece pop, and it starts to bring out all the sculptural work that I've done on it. The next part I do is with this guy, I did have a reference of a pig. And what I did was I just studied closely all the marks on the pig's skin and just all the little endearing features of a pig. And then I applied it to wanting to make this piece real and enhancing realism. So what I did, I used several different colors, and I went around and I did bruises and I did spots and dots and all sorts of different things all over this guy just to give it depth, because you're trying to bring up a white cake into something that has depth and texture, and that normally involves adding lots and lots of layers of paint. So that's why I do prefer hand painting, because I can go around and take my time and really think about what I'm doing with a piece. Next was the painting the eyes. So again, I used the reference of a pig picture that I found, and I just went and painted that very, very simple eye. Well, two eyes, but very, very simple. And at the end, I just finished off with a splatter of blood. So I used leaf glaze, and then I have a couple of different reds and browns that I mixed together, and I basically just got my paintbrush and just splattered it all over. It could have turned into a disaster, but it actually turned out fine. And I added some blood up to the axe there as well. To do the axe, that was just a prop. So all I used for that one was just a wooden dowel and some alfoil, and then I just sculpted the rest with modeling chocolate. It's only very barely attached to the cake, and it was just a prop that I wanted to do just to enhance the sort of the narrative, I suppose, of the piece. Okay, so if you want to know what modeling tools and things that I use, if you do watch past Diary of a Cake Artist from me, you will see me explain those. I just didn't want to sort of hash over it every single time I do one of these. I do have 3 classes coming up. They're in IT at the moment, about to go on my website. So the first one I have is an alien class, which is over 3 hours long. So it's a very in-depth class of everything that I do, and that piece incorporates every single technical skill that I use on my cakes. So look out for that, that's coming soon. I have a PDF class on the problem puppet, which is a Pinocchio-like character that I did a little while ago. So that PDF will be coming out shortly, and another tutorial that I have coming out is my chocolate cake recipe, and a step-by-step on exactly how I make that. And that's a chocolate cake recipe I've been using for probably now about 8 years, and I've never switched. So keep an eye out for those. Sign up to my newsletter on my website at HeidiDahlenberg.com, and that's where I will put all of the new things that are coming out. Hope you liked it. If there's any questions, please leave them in the link below, and I will see you soon.